Shock, UPND petitions to block Bright Nundwe's victory. Election under fire just days after Bright Nundwe was declared the winner, a dramatic twist has emerged. UPND's Muunda has petitioned the Electoral Commission of Zambia, urging it not to validate the election. The reason? Alleged nomination irregularities. Could Chawama be heading for another political showdown? Good day, viewers. Welcome to another edition of InspirAfrica Official. I'm Nakash. Well, what a week it's been across the continent, hasn't it? From economic shifts to political tremors, Africa continues to write its own story. But today, we're diving into something that sent shockwaves through Zambian politics. Democracy on trial. Victory denied. A nation divided. In the halls of power in Lusaka, something extraordinary is unfolding, a legal battle that threatens to overturn what many believed was a settled matter. Bright Nundwe, who stood triumphant after the electoral count, who celebrated with his supporters in the streets of Chawama, who believed his mandate was secure, now finds that mandate under siege. The United Party for National Development, the very party that governs Zambia, has taken an extraordinary step. They've petitioned to block his victory. They've launched a legal assault on the election results. They've raised their hand and said, "Stop. Something went wrong here." But what exactly went wrong? Was this election truly free and fair? Were voters manipulated? Were ballots tampered with? Were the rules of democratic engagement broken in ways we're only now beginning to understand? And here's where it gets even more troubling. What happens to the voice of the people when their vote is contested in court? What does it say about our democratic institutions when the ruling party challenges an election result? And perhaps most critically, if this victory is nullified, what precedent does that set for every election to come across this nation, across this continent? Can democracy survive when every loss becomes a lawsuit? When every defeat is declared a deception? When the will of the people becomes subject to the will of the courts? Factual foundation. The revelation came to light in mid-January 2026, when documents were filed at the Chawama Constituency Election Petition Court. The petitioner, the United Party for National Development. The respondent, Bright Nundwe of the Patriotic Front. This concerns the Chawama parliamentary by-election, a crucial contest in Luapula province that had captured national attention. The seat had become vacant following the death of the previous member of parliament, triggering a by-election that would test the political temperature in a region historically contested between the UPND and the PF. When results were announced, Bright Nundwe, the Patriotic Front candidate, emerged victorious. His supporters poured into the streets. Victory speeches were made. The democratic process appeared to have run its course. But within days, murmurs began to circulate. Questions were raised. Irregularities were alleged. The UPND's legal team, led by some of Zambia's most experienced electoral lawyers, began compiling evidence. Witness statements were gathered. Documentation was assembled. Affidavits were prepared. And then, with the precision of a legal strike team, they filed their petition. The grounds? Multiple allegations. Voter intimidation, irregularities in ballot counting, violations of electoral procedures, and potential manipulation of the results. The UPND claims that the electoral playing field was not level, that the process was compromised, and that Nundwe's victory should therefore be nullified. The petition now sits before the courts, waiting to be heard. A judge will examine the evidence. Witnesses will testify. And somewhere in that legal process, the fate of this election, and possibly the faith of Zambians in their democratic system, will be determined. Direct evidence. In their court filing, the UPND's lead counsel stated, "We have gathered substantial evidence that points to systematic irregularities in the electoral process. This is not about being sore losers. This is about protecting the integrity of our democracy." When we examined the polling stations in question, we found discrepancies that simply cannot be explained away by normal administrative errors. The petition document itself reads, The petitioner contends that the election was conducted in a manner that violated the Electoral Process Act. Specifically, we allege that there were instances of vote buying, that there was intimidation of voters, particularly in rural polling stations, and that the counting process lacked the transparency required by law. When pressed by journalists outside the court, the UPND provincial chairperson elaborated, "Look, we're not making these allegations lightly. We have witnesses. We have documentation. We have people who are willing to testify under oath about what they saw. There were polling stations where our agents were prevented from observing the count. There were irregularities in the voter register. There were instances where people voted multiple times." From the other side, Bright Nundwe responded with defiance. In a statement released to the press, he declared, "This petition is nothing more than a desperate attempt to overturn the will of the people. The people of Chawama spoke clearly. They chose me. They chose the Patriotic Front. And now, because the UPND doesn't like the result, they want the courts to give them what the voters denied them." During a radio interview, Nundwe went further, "I'm confident, very confident, that when this matter is heard in court, the truth will emerge. The election was free. It was fair. The Electoral Commission did its job. And, if there were any irregularities, they were minor, the kind of thing that happens in every election. They don't change the outcome. The margin was clear. The people have decided. Electoral Commission officials have been more circumspect." A spokesperson stated, "We acknowledge that a petition has been filed. We will cooperate fully with the court process. The Electoral Commission stands by the integrity of the process we conducted. However, we respect the right of any party to seek legal redress if they believe there were problems. That's what the law provides for." One witness mentioned in the petition, a polling agent from a rural station, gave testimony that has become central to the UPND's case. "I was there. I saw what happened. There were people who came to vote who weren't from our area. When I questioned it, when I said something, I was told to keep quiet or I would face problems. The presiding officer didn't want to hear it. They just wanted to finish quickly and, close the station." Deeper analysis. This petition represents far more than a dispute over one parliamentary seat. It's a stress test of Zambia's democratic institutions at a time when faith in electoral processes is fragile across Africa. Political analysts have been quick to weigh in. Dr. Muunda, a political science lecturer at the University of Zambia, offered this perspective. "What we're seeing is the judicialization of electoral disputes. Increasingly, African elections are not settled at the ballot box but in the courtroom. This has both positive and negative implications. On one hand, it shows that parties have faith in the legal system. On the other, it can undermine public confidence in elections themselves." The opposition Socialist Party released a statement expressing concern. "While we respect the right of the UPND to petition, we worry about the precedent this sets. If every election result can be challenged, if every victory can be litigated, where does that leave the voters? Democracy requires losers to accept defeat gracefully, even when it hurts." Legal experts point to the evidentiary burden the UPND faces. Electoral law requires not just proof of irregularities, but proof that those irregularities were substantial enough to affect the outcome. This is a high bar. As constitutional lawyer Mutal Chasanga explained, the petitioners must show that without the alleged irregularities, the result would have been different. This means they need to demonstrate widespread, systematic problems, not just isolated incidents. There are also questions about timing and motivation. The UPND, as the ruling party, has access to state resources and institutional power. Some critics have suggested that this petition is as much about political messaging as about genuine electoral concerns. By challenging the result, they signal to their base that they're fighting for every seat, that they won't accept defeat in what they consider their political territory. But supporters of the petition argue that this is precisely what opposition parties should do when they suspect foul play. "If we don't challenge questionable elections," one UPND official told us, "we're essentially giving permission for those practices to continue." democracy dies not with a bang but with a whimper. When good people stay silent in the face of irregularities, the Electoral Commission itself faces scrutiny. Were their procedures robust enough? Were polling agents properly trained? Was there adequate oversight? These questions will be answered in court, but they linger in the public discourse, casting shadows over an institution that must be above reproach if democracy is to function. And hanging over all of this is a broader continental concern. Are Africa's electoral systems mature enough to handle close, contested elections? Can institutions withstand the pressure when political stakes are this high? Can courts resist political interference and rule based solely on evidence and law? As this legal battle unfolds in the coming weeks, we'll be watching closely. The testimony will be heard. The evidence will be examined. And eventually, a judgment will be rendered that will either confirm Bright Nundwe's victory or send Chawama back to the polls. But regardless of the legal outcome, the real questions remain. What does this say about the state of Zambian democracy? What does it mean for future elections? And can the people's faith in the electoral process survive this kind of legal warfare? Thank you so much for watching today's edition of InspirAfrica Official. This is a developing story, and we need your voice in this conversation. What do you think? Is the UPND right to challenge this election, or should they accept the result and move on? Are election petitions a sign of a healthy democracy or a symptom of political immaturity? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's discuss this. We'll be back tomorrow with more stories from across our beautiful continent. Until then, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep believing in the Africa we're building together. This is Nakash, signing off. See you tomorrow.